Today, on Energy Contact, anything that flows has to flow through something. Electricity flows through wires, water flows through a riverbed or pipes or hoses. And just like blood flows through your veins and arteries, energy flows through you too. And that energy has a pulse, a rhythm, and a current. We're about to investigate that and get you current with what's flowing up the pipeline. That's what's coming up right now on Energy Contact.
I'm gonna drive away all these doubts I've been keeping and out. Keep my mind on better things. He ain't gonna worry and I ain't gonna complain. I'm gonna drive away all these doubts I've been keeping and out. Keep my mind on better things. Just keep my mind on better things.
Hello, and welcome to Energy Contact. My name is Joseph Willenbrink. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you to the production staff here in the studio for helping me get my message out to you. Energy Contact is a series that I'm presenting to you as a public service. It's about attaining perfect health, growth, self-improvement, happiness, and realizing your full potential. It's designed to present you a new way of seeing yourself and a new way of seeing the world around you. We're talking about things that have to do with making an energetic contact with yourself internally and with your environment. There's no difference between the body, the mind, the spirit, the emotion, the intellect, the ego. There's no difference between mass and energy. They're all exactly the same. There is something about us that just loves to categorize and classify, separate, parse these things out, take one little chunk out and examine it under a microscope, but lose the big picture. All that health, growth, and self-improvement we're talking about take place when we do just the opposite of all that. It takes place when we push these things together, when we combine them, when we make an energetic contact between the physical world and the unseen one. We're presenting on these programs a brand new paradigm that's thousands of years old. We're presenting extraordinary topics for ordinary people. And let's move right ahead with that. Let's bring up a slide. Everyone please understand that I am not a doctor. This show is not a medical advice show. It is not a medical anything show. We don't do medical things here. I might call myself an energy healer or a chakra healer, but state, federal, and local governments call me no such thing whatsoever. It's important to know that. There's a lot of important information on your screen right now. Please read it with your full attention, if you will. And when you've got that down, now would be a great time to locate a pencil and paper. Here's why you want to do that. At the end of the show, when the show closes, we're going to roll some credits, and on those credits there's going to be contact information for me. Now I invite and encourage you to get in touch with me. I'm sort of hoping that there'll be something I'll tell you today that'll make you want to do that. I'll be glad to hear from you. But in order to contact me, you're going to need that contact information. In order to get it, you're going to need a pencil and paper. Now there'll be plenty of time when the credits roll to get that stuff down if you've got your pencil and paper handy. So please locate that now. All right, everybody got what's on your screen? Good. Today's show is show number 53. Now if you're tuning in for the first time today, well thanks. Thanks and welcome. These shows are sequential. They build. So if it's your first time, there's some ramp up things, some up to speed things. We're talking about things today that we've introduced on previous shows. So you will have missed out on a couple of things, but I'm also doing my very best to make each show have a lot of value on a standalone basis. And I believe today's show does. I think you'll enjoy it. Please stick around. If what you see piques your interest, and it is one of your first times joining me, well then please look around because there will be earlier shows airing at later times. They'll either be re-airing right here on this channel or they'll be on perhaps different days and times in different areas, and if you look for them, I'll appreciate it. All right, and now it's the part of the show where we get to introduce my co-host. Let's get Slim on camera. This is my buddy Slim here, and Slim is here for a reason. Since we are investigating what it is that energy contacts in the physical self, well, we have to know about a couple of things, don't we? We have to know something about energy, and this show is certainly a program about energy. But all of that energy floating around somewhere in some detached place, it does us no good whatsoever. It does us no good until we bring it into contact with something. Well, Slim is here to help us understand what it is that the energy contacts. Remember, a body without energy is just a corpse. And energy without a body, well, it might be a number of cool things, but none of them are human. All right. Previously on Energy Contact, we have been discussing flows, haven't we? Pipelines and channels within our bodies and what flows through them. When we were kids, we learned that our bodies were just these individual hunks of mass. Different from one another, to be sure, but even more than that, different internally. A mind different than a body, different than a spirit, different than emotion, all separate from each other. But on Energy Contact, we've experienced ourselves in different and far more accurate ways. We've begun to see ourselves the way Einstein saw us, as frequencies and vibrations, as forces, internal ones acted upon by external ones. Whatever it is that makes us look the way we look, act the way we act, think the way we think, and feel the way we feel is a function of these unseen energy flows. And these forces themselves, the internal ones and the external ones, and also all the other energies that flow through them, and there's plenty of them. Anything that flows has a current, like electricity or like water. And currents can shock us. They can overwhelm us. They can carry us off. They can kill us. But they can also be controlled. They can be mastered. They can be wielded and honed into things for our benefit. That's what we're interested in. We've seen that while all these forces that are in operation are all invisible, they all manifest themselves in very visible, very physical ways. They all manifest themselves into the physical us, into our bodies. In fact, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to be a spiritual person until and unless you promote the flow of invisible energy through your physical structure. Now, in our examination of all these invisible flows, we've seen that many things that look and feel different are in fact the same thing. And many things that look and appear exactly the same are in fact quite different. Furthermore, many unreal things appear to be real, and many real things have the appearance of being unreal. 1,000,000 different people can look at the exact same object or think of the exact same concept, and they will see 1,000,000 different things or think of 1,000,000 different things. We've seen on Energy Contact that body intellect, haven't we? We've looked a lot at that. How the same materials in our brain that give us thought, memory, reason, recall, logic, intellect, intelligence, all those things that we've always thought were brain functions, isolated up here, how they in fact are in every cell of our body. They permeate every cell of our body. We build everything into that body intellect, all the promotions and resistances, all the attractions and repulsions. And then that body intellect turns right around and builds us. And we've also spoken of another invisible energy on Energy Contact, that old mysterious force that those old Indian mystics called Kundalini energy. So today, we're continuing to look at the invisible yet very real channels, or pipelines, through which energy flows. These are the same pipelines that process a lot of other things that you can't see. But you know they're very real. Love, goodness, anger, fear, all sorts of things. You can't draw a picture of them, but they're there. So that's what our show is about today then. It's about the invisible pipelines that conduct energy flows and create everything from form to spirit, and that are created by everything from form to spirit. Things that seem to be very different but are in fact the same thing. Like ice and water and steam, like mass and energy, like body, mind, intellect, emotion, ego, spirit. All these things are the same. Now soon, we're going to start looking in more detail at what flows through these pipelines, about the stops and the nodes and the checkpoints in the pipes that either facilitate the energy flows or crimp them off. But first, we really need to understand the pipes themselves at the physical energetic interface, at that place where energy contacts the physical self. All right, so much to do, but now we've reached the part of the show where we get to take a break for a second. Stop and take a big deep breath. If you're in a place where you can do so, close your eyes for a second, because we have reached the part of our show where we get to take our virtual field trip. We get to visualize, take a journey in our mind's eye, like we do about this point of every show. Well, for today's field trip, imagine that you're out strolling about and you see a friend, bump into a friend, and shortly into your conversation with him, he tells you about some numbness in his arm it's just flared up. He tells you he can't figure out why, and he's getting concerned. So you take a look at his forearm and his hand, and you can see that they are indeed quite pale. They're emaciated, starved for energy, starved for blood. Something's definitely wrong here. And then you look a little higher up, you scan up his arm, and you notice that there's a strap around his upper arm, and that it's very tight. And you say, hey, what's that thing doing there? And he says, oh, you know what, it's just some fashion thing. But I think mine's a couple of 2 sizes too small. Now the light comes on a little bit, and you can tell that your friend's new fashion statement has indeed become a tourniquet. That's where his problem is. And so you tell him that. But to your surprise, your friend is a little resistant at first. He says, do you really think so? Because that thing is attached way over here, and the numbness is way over here. Hold that thought. All right, we've been seeing that everything emotional, spiritual, intellectual is all somatic, that it manifests physically. Even though we established that in the very first episode of Energy Contact, we're still seeing new facets of it, new manifestations of it. If you resist energy flows through your physical channels, it will be very hard for you to be a spiritual person. That's important. I'm going to repeat it. If you resist energy flows through your physical channels, through your physical structure, it will be very hard for you to be a spiritual person. Now that's counterintuitive to most of us. We've always been so content to see physical things here, mental things over here, emotional things over there, spiritual things way out yonder, and so on. We've been so happy to see our body as this blob, separate from our mind, separate from our spirit, separate from our emotion. And there's some conveniences to that. But we're learning the unity. We're learning the sameness of it all. And to complicate things even more, each and every positive flow through us goes through the same pipeline as the negative flow does. So attracting to one automatically sticks us right to the other. Now that sounds like a lot of nice philosophy, but Einstein came along and showed us that it wasn't really philosophy at all. It's physics, it's science, pure and simple, very practical, tangible, very elementary science. That makes you think for a second, because the scientific world did not understand any of it before Einstein came along. And thousands of years before Einstein came along and put the science to it, mystics and seers, they understood it all completely. Those old guys understood energy contact. Now remember, when I'm talking to you about the old yogis, that the term yogi does not refer to somebody that's hanging out in those trendy yoga classes that you hear about. Yoga exercises are a very small subset of what is a very complex and profound spiritual philosophy. So, those yogis were philosophers. They were spiritual people. And now you start to realize that a lot of what's going on in those trendy yoga classes, well, maybe they aren't really teaching yoga at all. Those old venerable yogis who teach the meaninglessness of the physical self and of the physical planes, they're the guys that invented the exercises though. Why? Because they knew that body, mind, spirit, emotion, intellect, these were all the same thing. And they knew that in order to realize true spirituality, invisible energy had to freely flow through the physical body. In fact, mystics from every culture have known this from time immemorial. Chinese mystics, Celtic mystics, African mystics, Native American mystics, you name it, all seeing and all saying the exact same thing. So where did we forget this? Where did we lose touch with it? Those old yogis talked about what they called raga dveshas, attractions and repulsions, opposite sides of the same coin. Pleasure and pain, hot and cold, rich and poor, happy and sad, on it goes. You cannot appreciate or understand the comfort and the attraction of being rich, sheltered, happy, and full until you understand the pain and the repulsion and the fear of being poor, exposed, sad, and hungry. We don't attach to a good or bad outcome, we attach to the pipeline. And so we get whatever that pipeline happens to be processing at that time. This is precisely how the very pursuit of pleasure sets you up for pain. And yet, we all pursue comfort and pleasure, don't we? One of the goals of a spiritual life is to transcend these pairs of opposites, to transcend these pursuits. It's also one of the keys to attaining perfect health, growth, self-improvement, happiness, and realizing your full potential. Hold that thought. We're coming back to it. Let's shift gears for a moment and let's bring up a slide. This is a slide of two very different things that look very much alike. On one side of your screen right now is the infinitesimally small atom. And on the other side is the hugely enormous solar system. They look alike, don't they? That atom is much too small to see, and the solar system much too large. Those circles, by the way, those concentric circles, they really aren't there at all. They're not there in the physical sense. So these pictures are from scientific sources, but they're trying to show you invisible things. Remember, a long time ago, we saw that every science student learns that all models are wrong. Some models are useful. So this, what you see on your screen, these are not photorealistic things. They're representations, even though they're hard science. Excuse me. We're learning that the universe is a system of similarities, things that are made in the image and likeness of other things, holograms. So some things that look different are exactly the same, and some things that look identical are very different. A billion different people look at the same object and see a billion different things. Now let's look at something else. Now what you're going to see on your screen there is a picture of a spine, and wait, what's that other thing over there? Oh my goodness, that is DNA. And I'm preparing to show you some of the similarity between these two structures. Now we've known the shape of the spine since we've known we had a spine. We've known about the structure of DNA for less than half a century, not very long in the scheme of things. That spine there supports our physical body. The DNA supports our genetic information. All right, let's come back up here. DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid, is complex stuff, and we're not going to go into it much today. We might come back and do a show or two on DNA in the near future, but be at peace, it won't be a technical show. You do not need to understand genetics to make energy contact. There are a lot of people who know a whole lot more about DNA than I do, though, and they have failed to make some of the basic connections that you and I are about to investigate right here. DNA, in short, carries our hereditary information. Genes are made up of DNA segments. So DNA has to do with how your ancestors' energy builds your physical mass. So it has a lot to do with the body intellect, doesn't it? It has a lot to do with energy contact. That's enough about it for now, other than to have you bear in mind that the way DNA is structured is a scale model of the way other things are structured. In the same way conceptually that the atom and the solar system are sort of scale models of each other. The structure of DNA is important, and it wasn't understood well at all until the research of a fellow named J.D. Watson. In 1968, he published a very famous book called The Double Helix. And if you're really interested in understanding DNA, I recommend that book. All right, let's turn back to our slide here. Let's bring that back up. Here it is, and you can see that that double helix that Dr. Watson refers to has to do with that dual spiral shape of DNA there. On the other side of your screen, that spine, it's not a double helix. It's not even a single one. But like DNA, it is a column, and it's a pipeline, and it's something through which information flows, something through which energy flows. Just like the DNA, that spine there, and like the spinal cords and the nervous systems and so on, everything processing information and energy, all promoting flows or not. All right, let's come back here, and we're going to change gears completely for a second. Hang on, we'll put this all together. We're going somewhere else now. Remember, we're looking at visible pipelines and invisible ones. Spines and DNA are energy pipelines. Let's go find some other ones. Let's look inside your body. Inside your body, you have veins and arteries. Veins and arteries, what are they? Well, they're energy pipelines. And through them flows blood, which is energy, or which is at least the medium that sends and receives energy. You got other things inside you too. You've got a digestive system, intestines processing food energy. You've got brachia and lung tissues processing air energy. All of these things are energy pipelines. Let's look at something else today. We're going to bring my buddy Cool Chi Guy on camera. Cool Chi Guy gets one of his rare on-screen moments. He tends to be a little shy. Cool Chi Guy is an acupuncture model. He is a roadmap, a training tool for acupuncturists. And all these little points that you see on him, all these little things here, they're all acupuncture points. The little things that look like letters you see, they actually are. They're the labels. But what we want to focus on are the little lines. If you look very carefully, you can see little lines connecting those dots. What those lines are, those are called meridians. Well, what's a meridian? Well, it's an energy channel, and through it flows something that Chinese medicine calls qi. And it doesn't stop there. We're going to go and look at some other energy pipelines. Let's come immediately to our next slide. Excuse me. And we're going to look at some DNA in the spine again. But this time, I've added something else. Here what you see on the, what's that on the right of your screen, is a representation of something called the Sushumna Nadi and the chakras. The Sushumna Nadi itself is just that skinny little pipeline, the white pipeline running right down the middle. Now perhaps this is the first time that you have ever heard the term Sushumna Nadi, but those old yogis knew about what the Sushumna Nadi was years and years ago. As a matter of fact, that picture, the picture on the right of your screen there, is probably near identical to ones that they drew 6,000 years ago, maybe 10,000 years ago. Nobody really knows. Now the truth is, you cannot really draw a picture of a nadi or a chakra because they are not physical things. Just like you can't draw a picture of those orbit lines that the planets travel around, or just like you can't draw a picture of air, or love, or integrity. All right, let's come back here. You can't draw them, but they're all completely real. Invisible, but completely real. More real than a lot of things that you can see and that you can pick up. Remember, all models are wrong, but some models are useful. Those old mystics, they didn't know anything about DNA, and they didn't really know much about spines, at least not in the scientific quantitative sense that we know. But they understood the model. They understood the sameness of things and the reality of invisible things long before smart scientists had any grasp of it whatsoever. Remember, science didn't figure out DNA until almost 1970. But about 5,000 or 8,000 years BC, nobody knows exactly, these old mystics figured it out. And they figured out things that Western science didn't even dream about until the 20th century. So it's only logical to believe that they figured out other things that Western science still hasn't discovered. You can put the word discover in quotes. In fact, we've already seen that yesterday's mysticism is just today's grade school science. Just think how advanced science could be right now if it wasn't so pompous and sanctimonious about mysticism. And if science would just make energy contact. All right, off the soapbox though, and back to nadis. What's a nadi? A nadi is just an energy channel. You can think of a nadi as being like an artery or a vein. It's similar in its concept. If you're more Chinese, or more from a Chinese background in theory, you can think of the nadis as being very much like meridians. Let's take a moment while we're talking about this to bring up one more slide, and we'll look at some words here. These are just the words we've been using over the past couple of shows, and maybe it's helpful to see them spelled out. Now, according to old yogis, we have upwards of 72,000 nadis in us. And you can think of those nadis as being analogous to like big arteries and capillaries. So that Sushumna Nadi is the biggest nadi. It's sort of like the nadi aorta, if you will. And then there's all sorts of little tiny ones going around. Now blood flows through veins and arteries, and blood is energy. Chi flows through meridians, and chi is energy. Prana flows through nadis, and prana is energy. All the same. They're just different words from different cultures to describe the same thing. Like ice and water and steam, all the same. So where does Kundalini energy fit into the picture? Well, Kundalini energy is just a form of prana, albeit a form with a little bit of a special manifestation. And that's where we'll be headed. But now, let's go back and take a look at our spine and our DNA and our Sushumna Nadi. There they are. You can see that all three items on your screen there have a vertical structure, just like Slim does and just like you and I do. They all look like pipelines, don't they? But remember, that Sushumna Nadi is just a pole. There are other things on that representation. What are they? Those little circles. Those things represent chakras. Now, I mentioned to you that once we understand the pipelines, we'd look at the things on the pipes or in the pipes that either crimp or facilitate the flow of Kundalini energy. Well, those chakras are pretty much it. They're the things that could do either one, either resist or promote. And they're important things to know about. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let's come back to pipelines and flows. And let's come back up here. One of my favorite things to tell you on energy contact is that gravity falls down, entropy falls apart, and energy falls up. Well, right now we're looking about some of the things that energy falls up. Keep in mind what we want to understand here. We're getting very technical. We want to keep the purpose, the goal in mind. Pleasure and health are a function of the free flow of energy. The free flow of energy is the natural state of things. Those are things in their natural order. Pain and sickness are a function of separation and compression. They are a function of resistance to flow, and they are the unnatural state. We want to return to our natural state, and we want to understand that that energy of it flows through pipelines. And so we want to understand how to facilitate that flow, don't we? And how to unlearn the ways we've instinctively learned to seal it off. Most of us would never dream of tying a tight tourniquet around our arm because we instinctively know that we would cut off the flow of life. And yet that's what we're doing. We're doing that very same thing with the flows of energy in us. Anything that flows has a current. And remember, that current can overwhelm you, it can carry you away, or it can be wielded. We're interested in wielding these unseen energy flows in such a way that we can roll with them, and therefore create pleasure and health and well-being. Because when we stop them, what happens is we get so preoccupied with making our pain go away that we forget that the answer is in those internal flows. And so we look for outside things to set us free and to make our dreams come true, or worse, pills to numb us, like that tourniquet. Here on Energy Contact, we're learning about promoting flow, because promoting the flow of positive things is always good for us. On Energy Contact, we're interested in positive outcomes. And that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll get more into this next time. And until then, I wish you peace and positive energy and a healthy life in Energy Contact.
Just keep my mind on better things.